How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Hopefully, just having a lovely day. Zach Taylor, under the microscope by Bengals fans recently. Now, here's the thing with coaching, and it doesn't matter who your coach is. You're the best coach in the world. There's always going to be that group and percentage of a fan base that is calling for the coach's head and questioning a coach, scrutinizing a coach. It's just how sports are. There's always going to be that group. Always, always, always. You're always going to have the pessimistic, the negative side of things to look at. Why would you make that play call? I would have done this better, done that better. There's always going to be the couch coach. As fans, I think most of us, we do try not to be that person. Sometimes it can be hard in a moment. A heated moment, emotional things are emotional. You look for an outlet. Like, what's the problem? See you later, coach. That's the problem. Let's figure something out. And we have to be mindful of that. And we have to say, hey, is that what's going on right now with Zach Taylor? Because there is a lot of talk. I mean, there really isn't an in-between here. It's a very polarizing topic amongst Bengals fans right now, where it's, hey, Zach Taylor's the problem, he's got to go, and there's nothing you can tell those people that changes their mind. And then there's the people that Zach Taylor's got to stay. He's done nothing wrong. All this hate, all this scrutiny, this criticism, he doesn't deserve it. The question is, what is the answer here? Are we getting a little too happy and a little too complacent with Zach Taylor because he brought the Bengals to 2 AFC championship games? Or are we getting too pessimistic here with Zach Taylor because the Bengals are losing football games and they're not, producing at the level we expect? Maybe our expectations are too high and they're doing good where they're at. Where's the happy medium here? I try to do my best. Sometimes we can get emotional in the moment. It's been a week, kind of had the point from my perspective. Bengals are going nowhere this season to play. They aren't. Maybe they'll go 8-9. Maybe they'll go 7-10. I think that's the ceiling. But I don't imagine a playoff run. Not now with a backup quarterback. That's not going to happen. And that's okay. That's okay. I don't blame. Bengals go 7-10 this season. I don't blame Zach Taylor. Bengals go 6-11 this season. I might not blame Zach Taylor. I think that's the border though. Because hey, if you go 6-11. That means the Bengals finish the season, 1-5 from here on out? They're 1-6 without their starting quarterback. If you go 7-10, then all of a sudden you're 2-5 without your starting quarterback. And then all of a sudden you say, okay, that's okay. Tough schedule to finish the season. You're going to lose football games without your starting quarterback. That's going to happen. 2-5, that's okay. And for me, I say, all right, 2-5, that might be okay. What happens if 0-7 happens? What if 1-6 happens? Things aren't okay. And there's a lot to dig in here. But just off the very basic premise, I know a lot of people defend Zach Taylor because the Bengals have a backup quarterback. Well, here, let me throw some stuff at you. The New York Jets have had a backup quarterback all season. They are 4-7. The New York Giants have had a backup quarterback for the last 7 games. They are 3-4 in that time span. The Minnesota Vikings have had a backup quarterback for the last 4 games. The Minnesota Vikings are missing the best wide receiver on the planet right now. The Minnesota Vikings, in a similar situation as the Bengals, where their run game has just not gotten off the floor this season, are 2-2 with a backup quarterback. If those teams who entered the season, no questions about it, well, with Aaron Rodgers, of course, the Jets were a Super Bowl contender. But I mean, besides that, none of these teams in the past have proven they're a Super Bowl contender. They didn't walk into the season a bigger favorite than None of them did. If those teams that weren't favorites entering the season can do better than Zach Taylor does to finish this season and better than a Cincinnati Bengals football team does to end this season, how do you not question Zach Taylor? Now, if they do similar, but Taylor does similar numbers, I think, again, push the talk down to Bay. If the Bengals can win 2 games the rest of the season, push the talk down to Bay. I think Bengals win anything over 2 games this season. All right. You know what? Maybe we overreacted. Maybe Zach Taylor isn't doing that bad. Now, here's the thing, though. Again, talking about the case, so far, I'm just reading things from afar. You take it how you will. The debate so far, what I've seen across the interwebs for Zach Taylor, it has pretty much been the people that are fire Zach Taylor, he's been doing a poor job, have given statistic after statistic after statistic. Meanwhile, the people that are pro keep Zach Taylor have given nothing but emotional defenses of Zach Taylor or beliefs of Zach Taylor, and nothing that's really been proven on paper. And I think that's kind of a big thing when you think about it, because here's the thing with Zach Taylor. Here's the naysayers: 9-19 against the division. And this is what's interesting to me. I feel like you get a lot of excuses out of the Zach Taylor supporters right now because 9-19 against the division. First thing people say, it's a tough division. Okay. You're a Super Bowl contender. You're an AFC Championship contender 2 years in a row. You should still be winning more than half those games, at least half of those games, right? Okay, 9-19. Cincinnati Bengals under Zach Taylor have started the season slow literally every single season. It's taken 3-4 games for the team to figure things out under Zach Taylor. Every single season. That's not debatable. That's facts. They have started the game slow very frequently. It became the Bengals' way where they would start the game slow. Joe Burrow would be Joe Burrow in the final 2 minutes of the first half. He'd go out there, call the plays, call the shots, do what he has to do, score to get the ball in the second half. They do it again. Remember, was it the Super Bowl year? They won like 9 straight or 9 of 11 or whatever it was, coin tosses. They got the ball in the second half. That was a big deal because they went and did that, and the second half came around. And credit Zach Taylor, they would play better in the second half. The adjustments would be made. You got to give Zach Taylor this credit. But a lot of the time we would see that it would happen. They get in that hole. Joe Burrow would kind of have to take control. The defense would have to make the big stops late in the game to get the offense back into it. That, those two sides of that, slow game playing to start, good adjuster halftime. Mid-time, halftime adjustment side of Zach Taylor. Got to give the credit there. Got to give him credit where it's due. We've seen that throughout his career. Bengals typically a much better second half team. Credit the coach for adjusting the game plan. And I see, again, 2 AFC Championship games. Don't take that for granted. Don't take it for granted at all. You're lucky to get there. What's difficult to decipher here is Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Didn't matter who their coach was. They put their team in those games every single season. You'll wonder, Joe Burrow, is he on that caliber? He's going to put his team in that situation every single season. If you get the right combination at coach, though, he's going to put his team in a much better situation to win more Super Bowls as opposed to just getting them there with maybe an average coach that you're just making look good. And the thing with the Bengals, they did make the Super Bowl that season. Absolutely. You know what else happened, though? Evan McPherson played out of his mind, nailing field goal after field goal. The Bengals defense made big play after big play after big play to keep this offense in the game. Again, it was a Bengals offense that was stagnant very often. Burrow was getting killed, of course, because of the offensive line, but it was stagnant very often. And that is the one thing that Zach Taylor did have full control of. He doesn't have the control of Evan McPherson's foot. That defense ran by Luder and Rumo, who's been stellar. That's where you question things. That's definitely where you question things. But at the same time, they did get there. They did believe in themselves. They did find a way to win those football games. And you have to credit your head coach for being the leader, being the man in front, the man in charge that says, hey, we're down, we're out. No, we're not out. We're not out, actually. We're down 14, down 17 against the Chiefs. Any other team probably crumbles. Zach Taylor finds a way to rally his group, keeps his team believing, and they find a way to win these football games. That's a big deal. It's not a statistic by any stretch of the imagination that Zach Taylor is responsible, but yeah, a lot of the time it is. You got to give him the game planning credit. You have to give him that morale boost credit, the culture credit, and that's what the big defense is for Zach Taylor right now. I completely understand that because that is tough to come by. We know with the Marvin Lewis era, he could not do that. He didn't have the abilities. He didn't have the ability to help his team step up in big games. He didn't have the ability to win a big game. Throughout his entire 16 years here, it never happened. Zach Taylor's proven that now in 2 years in a row. Winning the big games is something the Bengals can now do. It's a culture change. It's something they couldn't do in the past, and it's something that holds a lot of weight in this league. And, let's talk about the Marvin Lewis, Zach Taylor thing. This is what interests me the most, I think, is seeing that, Marvin Lewis is 68-50 as a record with Andy Dalton. Zach Taylor was what, 2-11, 2-9? 2-11. 2-11. Make sure we got the stats right. 2-11 with Andy Dalton. And a lot of people say, again, the big Zach Taylor believers, the hardcore truthers, appreciate you supporting our coach, first of all. I don't want no stabs being taken here, but, the hardcore truthers will say, hey, you can't compare that because that's a different Andy Dalton when Zach Taylor took over. And again, that's just an excuse. You say what it is, it's an excuse. You have to be honest with yourself and say that's an excuse because the year before Marvin Lewis won 6 games with that same exact football team. Zach Taylor won 2 games with that same exact football team. Well, with some of the guys he brought in with Andy Dalton, though, And here's the thing, backup quarterbacks. Stats are stats. Marvin Lewis was 9-13 with a backup quarterback. Zach Taylor so far is 2-9 with a backup quarterback. I ain't saying Marvin Lewis should be the head coach right now. I don't believe that at all. I think it's funny though. You think about the Demon Love shot. If you were to combine the two, if you could bring Zach Taylor's cultural abilities, ability to lead a team and keep them disciplined and composed, and you put out some of Marvin Lewis's defensive prowess, that'd be an interesting combination. But nonetheless, those are stats. Those are factual stats. Do with them that you will. But that backs up the case of why people believe Zach Taylor should not be the coach of this football team. And there are reasons he deserves to be under a lot of fire right now, a lot of heat right now, because of stuff like that. Other teams are finding ways to win football games with bad coaches. If you walk into a season as an AFC championship contender, a Super Bowl contender, and one of the favorites to come out of the AFC, and you can't win football games without one player, that's a concern. That's a big concern because you're the coach. You created this team. Say what you will about everything else. This is a Bengals run team. Again, under Zach Taylor, has been non-existent. The run game has been horrible. He's had years to figure it out. It's the worst in the league this year. It's gotten worse before it's gotten better. You gotta hold the coach accountable at some point because, again, if it's not his fault, it's the offensive line coach or the OC's fault. And why we're not changing that? Because they're bringing in talent. They're not piecing it together offensively. They're not game planning to get some of these stud receivers. They got some stupid good receivers out wide. If they're having a hard time getting open and making big plays, you got it. The guy with the call sheet in his hand, the guy coming with the game plans. There's a lot to be said there. And if it's not his fault, it's somebody's fault in that coaching staff. Why is he still around? Zach Taylor's got a big say in that. So he does deserve a lot of the credit for the struggles. Again, he deserves a lot of the credit for the things going well. The question you ask yourself as a Bengals fan is, how difficult is it to replace what Zach Taylor brings to the table? And how difficult is it to get what Zach Taylor is not bringing to the table and a new head coach? Because obviously, if you have a hard time getting both, the odds are you're going to get a worse coach and you're going to regret it heavily, saying, all right, Zach Taylor's got to go. But on the other hand, if that's not the case, and maybe there's a lot of solid coaches out there that are proving they can win championship, play championship, rally the bunch, and they can game plan out the rear end. You all of a sudden you say, okay, we already, and also, how much do you believe Joe Burrow is the Joe Burrow effect? That's the big. I think that's the thing you walk into here, and debate you don't know. That is the one big unknown out of all this. You do not know is what the Joe Burrow effect is. We know at LSU, Joe Burrow turned that franchise around, turned that program around, we should say, and turned him into a championship winner. And the second he left, right down the toilet. It was terrible. But Joe Burrow was a winning culture type of guy. Coach O got all the praise in the world, and then they fired him. If that tells you how big of an impact Joe Burrow had on that franchise organization. And that's the thing. You wonder how much of that is Joe Burrow instilling that confidence, instilling that belief. Because look how many people have come. There ain't nobody came to this football team because Zach Taylor's your head coach. That's why he had such a hard time getting coordinators in the first place. They came to this football team because they knew Joe Burrow was their guy. So you go into football games thinking, as long as Joe Burrow is my quarterback, I think we have a chance to win. As much as we can say Zach Taylor's the culture changer, if Joe Burrow's on that football field, the defense thinks if we can make a stop, anything can happen. And that is such a big thing for teams. And that is, this is why the rest of this season is so important. Because if Zach Taylor is the reason they're winning, if Zach Taylor is the reason this team believes in themselves and he's the leader, he can rally this bunch. They can win 2 to 4 football games the rest of the season. If they go onto the field, though, and they look like, he's lost the locker room, they don't believe they can win, that goes on Zach Taylor. That's a check to Joe Burrow's resume, and that's an X near Zach Taylor's resume. I think that's facts. Because, again, what we brought up earlier, there's teams with less, much less, that are finding ways to win football games with backup quarterbacks across the league. So the Bengals feel like they're out of every game and they can't compete, especially offensively, without Joe Burrow, but still with some of these weapons on this team. You really got to question Zach Taylor. But if they find a way to win football games, again, I don't expect them to win a lot. If they find a way to go 6-11, 7-10, you gotta back off Zach Taylor, especially 7-10. Bengals finish 7-10 with this schedule. You gotta back off Zach Taylor and give him the credit and say, okay, we was wrong. As Zach Taylor and naysayers, you gotta say we was wrong. Give this man some props. Give him the credit. He found a way to win football games without Joe Burrow. The first couple seasons it wasn't pretty without Burrow, but he's figured things out. This team's more complete now. It's winning. It's a winning culture here, and Zach Taylor deserves to stay. They don't win any games though. You got to question things, I think. At the end of the day, we're just trying to be as open-minded as possible. It's difficult. It's really difficult because the worst thing you can do is get too emotionally attached to one way or the other and say, okay, we closed the window on winning championships because we got too attached to this guy. But at the same time, you can say, oh, we got too pessimistic or too negative about this guy. And we said, let's get rid of him. And we look back and say, wow, we let go of a good one. And we ain't replaced that coach since. I think we revisit this conversation at the end of the season. I think right now you have to give Zach Taylor, you have to give this Bengals team a chance to play out the rest of the season before you draw further conclusions. Love to hear everyone's thoughts, though. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.